Good afternoon. This is Barbara Brandt, Director of the National Center for Interprofessional Practice and Education, bringing you another webinar in our series, Connecting at the Nexus, COVID-19 edition. Today's session is called From Our Team to Yours, Strategies for Successful Remote Teaming. And our presenters today are out of Arizona State University. I want to welcome you to today's webinar on behalf of the current chair of the American Interprofessional Health Collaborative, Gail Jensen. This is our membership, the National Center's membership organization. So I encourage you to look into membership in AIHC. So we started this last week, and it's a series of web-based discussions, webinars, and forums to foster conversation, learning, and resource sharing among leaders in interprofessional practice and education. All of the sessions are recorded and they're archived, and they are available on the URL that you have on your screen. So we will be sending you information, how you can connect to this webinar and others after this session. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Jerry Lamb, who's the leader of this team, who's going to be presenting to you their strategies for successful remote teaming. Jerry?
Thank you, Barbara. And thanks so much to the National Center for doing this series. It's so important to get us all together. So my team, CAIPER, the Center for Advancing Interprofessional Practice, Education, and Research, is delighted to be with you today. We've been working remotely as a team for quite some time now and think we do it well. We're also really glad to be connecting with all of you to our interprofessional community. I think we're all really aware right now of how important teamwork and collaboration are to what we're going through as a country and a world. So we hope you're doing all okay, and we're hoping to share with you some very practical things that we've learned. So on the slide in front of you, a few weeks ago, as a team, like the National Center, we felt we wanted to reach out and contribute. So we started this rolling blog that you see in front of you here called Stories from the Field, How to Do Teaming and IPE at a Distance. And we decided to start it with our own story. We've got, just so that you know, we've got upcoming pieces on the running blog from friends and colleagues all over ASU, the Arizona Nexus, and we would invite you as well. If you want to send us stuff, we would be delighted to get it on the blog. Next slide, Sean Diego. So here's the CAIPER team that you're going to be meeting today. And we have Nina, Yvonne, Jody, as well as myself. Each one of us is going to introduce ourselves and what we do on CAIPER when we do our part of the talk. I'll just share up front that Nina and Yvonne and I have been working virtually together for about 6 years now. Jody joined us last year, and some of us have never met each other face to face. We only know each other virtually. And I'd like to also share, this is the first time that we're doing a webinar together, so this is pretty special to us as a team. Next slide. We know that there's a tremendous amount of information out there, more every day on digital teaming, everything from, as you can see in front of you here, organizational psychology to the feng shui of a home office. And certainly if you could see my home office, you'd know I could use a little feng shui. I'm really into piles, as my team knows. And my husband has now suggested that I put a vase of flowers on top of my piles. So next slide. So here are the topics that each one of us is going to talk about today. We figured you can take a look at what's out there. We know there's a lot. We decided to tell our own story. And here are the 4 topics each one of us is going to talk about. And we think, in talking together as a team, these are the ones that are most essential to our effectiveness as a team. Building digital agency, useful tools, Nina's going to talk about that. Trust and caring on the team, Jody's going to talk about that. Engagement and focus, that's Yvonne's topic. And getting the work done, what leaders can do. And I'm going to do that. Next slide. Here are our objectives, and you'll see that they're very practical. We've focused on tools and strategies, so we're going to share some of the things that we think work very well for us. We're hoping you find some of them useful and you find some takeaways. I'll share with you that in the course of putting this together as a team, I learned some new things that I didn't know before. So we'll check in with you at the end about that. So next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Nina now.
Thank you, Jerry, and greetings to everyone. My name is Nina Karamehmedovic, and I'm the project manager for CAIPER. I joined the team in Phoenix in 2013, and I have lived in Seattle since 2015. When Jerry asked us a couple of weeks ago to put together a few sentences for the blog about being a remote IP team, I was quite ready to do it. We have been a digital geographically distributed team, as Jerry mentioned, for over 6 years now. And writing about the tools and resources we use, the team member roles, and the flexibility that this setup offers, it came naturally. Next. So fast forward just 2 weeks, and here we are with the topic of digital teamwork probably among the top hashtags across the country and around the globe. So in preparation for this webinar, I did some research and found a few resources among many that I'd like to share today. These resources offered me a space to reflect on who we are as a team, where we've been, and also on where we are going, not just as our CAIPER team, but increasingly as a digital world. One of the resources is the Deloitte report pictured here. It describes the workplace, digital workplace, with important emphasis on its ability to break down communication barriers and to foster efficiency, innovation, and growth. Next. This next picture is from another Deloitte resource, a little bit more recent one from just November of last year, that addresses digital workplace at the level of the individual and introduces the term, which was new to me, digital agency. Digital agency is not different from personal agency in any other context, of course, and it identifies an individual's ability to effectively and productively adapt to change. Our team has been developing our respective digital agencies together. We did it gradually, and we did it over a period of time that I recognize may look like a luxury these days. We were driven by our shared vision, our passion for excellence and what we do, and by an overriding collaborative and supportive spirit. And I will illustrate our journey in just a bit. Next. The last resource to share on my list today offered a logical next link to my now expanding understanding of the world of digital teamwork. So starting from the notion of individual digital agency, it brought me to the team and organizational levels where our combined digital agencies, under a set of supportive organizational circumstances, come together as organizational or teams digital agility. Digital agility, as we can see here, speaks to an ability to create and respond to change to survive, grow, and transform at an organizational level. As we speak, we are all facing unprecedented external circumstances that push us further in this direction, and very fast. Next. So how did we get from there to here? As mentioned, we started in 2014 when we hired Yvonne as a senior instructional designer for our work on a Macy grant. The first thing Yvonne did was introduce us to Zoom 6 years ago. And this is how and when our digital journey began. As our team over the years grew more remote, so did our digital agencies and our team's digital agility. Now, one of the characteristics of both digital agency and digital agility is that of discernment. With the proliferation of digital cloud-based tools over the years, as I'm sure you all can speak to, we needed to be not only open and trusting to what was emerging, but also to be intentional and strategic and creative with the digital choices that we were making, and also with the associated monetary and time investments that we were making along the way as well. Next. With this discernment in mind, what you see here are just a very few select examples of the tools we routinely use. And of course, they're not meant to be endorsements, but rather illustrations of what has worked for us over time. And as we've come to adapt and often expand their use beyond their original intent, perhaps. A couple of brief examples here. I've said in the past that our team meetings often feel like mini webinars with multi-directional learning happening all the time. With Zoom screen sharing, we use Google Docs, for example, to compose agendas together, to take notes in real time, to link resources and comments for future reference and reporting. We don't use Zoom, Google Docs are just an example from the Google Suite that we use beyond the Docs alone, of course. And then back to Zoom, we don't use Zoom only for meetings, for the recordings and the transcriptions of the meetings, which oftentimes come in so very handy, but we also use Zoom for project activities such as expert interviews and focus groups, and definitely for our water cooler conversations. As early adopters of Smartsheet, we've used it not only to plan and manage projects, but also to develop strategic plans, track our vacations and expenses, and to develop proposal components and project reports. Last but not the least, XMind, which was one of our early finds, has been a wonderful tool for brainstorming and ideating that we've also used for marketing pitches, project tracking, content organization, and all sorts of visual articulation. Next. I will conclude here with another list from the Deloitte article, which proposes 5 main domains of capabilities the digital workplace offers. And our CAIPER experience checks against all of them. With that, I'm most grateful for the invitation to talk to you about our digital journey, and I hope you will find it helpful and inspiring. It was very validating to me personally to reflect on this journey, and now with you. Thank you. Jody, off to you.
Thank you so much, Nina. My name is Jody Thompson, and I am the Communications Program Coordinator for CAIPER. I get to do a lot of work with the website and the blogs that we present, and if you follow us on social media, I am the one behind the scenes. Next slide, please. As we all know, maintaining connections and sharpening communication is more important than ever. And for teams, well, the past few weeks may have been a seamless transition from the physical workplace to remote locations, and for others, it can still be a pretty scary time. So I kept thinking to myself, can we talk? We're going to talk about the trust and caring and the authentic conversation today. Next slide, please. So let's face it, daily routines, commutes, schedules, and even down to a morning work session in the local coffee shop or going to lunch with friends or even having a water cooler check-in with your work battle buddy is at this point gone. For teams that were in physical proximity of each other, this space is gone for now, and we don't know for how long. So the question is, what happens next? Next slide. You already know a lot about your team, but how will this translate when you don't see each other every day, when you don't pass in the hall, or when you can't pop your head in a team member's office when you have a question? How can this normal become a new normal virtually? So I have a story for you. My friends and family, like many of you, are spread across the country, and my best friend lives in San Francisco. So a few weeks ago, to pass the time, we decided to go through my vinyl records virtually. We set up FaceTime, and for close to 2 hours, we went through my albums one by one. And for a moment, I could have sworn we were in the same room together. And this was a pretty comforting feeling. There was an authenticity and an ease to the conversation, but it was all happening through a little screen. I thought about how and if teams are transitioning to this comfort level of communication, and then I thought of my own team here at CAIPER. Next slide. The authentic communication that has been happening on the CAIPER team has been cultivated over time and was a culture I was welcomed into with open arms, or in our case, open screens. But what makes our team communication work? We all work remotely, and on top of that, we work in different time zones. Well, it's pretty simple. Because of our digital agility that we consistently work on, practice, and develop, we foster a caring, trusting, and authentic environment. But the question is, how do we do that? Next slide. Care. We genuinely care about each other's success, challenges, needs, wants, goals, projects, milestones, and even hobbies. And because we have set scheduled times to meet each week, we have dedicated, focused time to review not only our work agenda, but to also check in on each other. One meeting icebreaker that works for us is something called the team charter. At the beginning of our weekly operations meeting, we take turns selecting a quote, phrase, or motto to lead our check-in. Some of our best conversations and work sessions have come from team charter topics. One of our favorite phrases is that all boats must rise. Next slide. And then there's trust. With the care put into our scheduled meetings and with the meetings we have with each other, and because we never have had the ability to be in the same office together, we hold our interactions dearly, and it's with this that a trust is created. We trust that our team members will show up and communicate, be prepared, remain engaged, and hold each other accountable, and to be vulnerable. And even during times like now, we can keep growing, even though it feels like an impossible space to push through. Next slide. And then authentic. And it's this process, the caring and the trusting, that gets you to the authentic conversation. Over the past 2 weeks, the CAIPER team has produced a new rolling blog series called Stories from the Field, and you can see it on our website, and we can provide the link in the chat box. This series was inspired by the blog our team wrote together about teamness in isolation. We hope that our experience can help with yours and ease you through any of the bumps and reassure teams that remote teaming can work and that those water cooler talks can still happen. Next slide. But for now, they will have to be over the phone or on FaceTime, through texting or Zoom. But just try to remember and always make it okay for your team to ask. And remember that you can ask. Can we talk? Thank you so much, and I'm going to hand it over to Yvonne.
Thank you, Jody. I was so relaxed by your presentation that for a minute there, I forgot that I was speaking next. So hello, everybody. My name is Yvonne Price, and I'm the Senior Instructional Designer for CAIPER. I have actually been working remotely since before I came to CAIPER, so for about 8 years now. And I'm going to talk about 3 ways to keep team members engaged during virtual meetings. So some of these things I'm talking about are things you've probably already familiar with, and you may practice them in face-to-face meetings, but I'm going to show you how they come together and why they are especially important in a virtual environment. So it's no secret that working remotely in the digital workplace has its own unique set of distractions. Kids, pets, noises, tempting trips to the refrigerator for a snack, and the list goes on. So my husband and I have both been working remotely for over 8 years now, and we do it at home with 2 small children. So I kid you not, what you see here on the screen has happened to me before. We take turns watching the kids and doing their schooling throughout the entire day while the other one works. So it's a back and forth, and it's an endless battle for us to maintain boundaries and structure so that we are minimizing moments like this one that you see on the screen right here. Next slide, please. Now, minimize is the key word here, and I want to stress that because I've learned that no matter how hard I try or how hard I push, eliminating distractions in a home work environment just isn't possible. So instead, I've learned to manage distractions by setting boundaries and sticking to them. This is my big tip for dealing with distractions in the home work environment. Now, there's a lot of info out there about this and how to set up a home office and a home workspace and all the different things to consider. So, and I'm sure many people are dealing with these things right now. I'm not going to go specifically into this topic any further. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sean, can I have the next slide?
Are you not seeing it changed?
I'm not, no. It's frozen for me, but I'm not sure if everybody else can.
Yvonne, we all can see it on our end.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will do my best to follow along. It's stuck for me. Okay, so once you get the home distractions, there it is, I see it now. Once you get the home distractions sorted out, the isolated nature of a virtual meeting introduces a whole new set of challenges for being and staying present. So, starve your distractions and feed your focus. I'm not sure which slide you're on, Sean, but I'm on the one that says starve your distractions and feed your focus. I'm not sure I'm seeing the right ones anymore. There it is. So this is an obvious tip, and it works to keep you present, but it's also the thing that takes the most discipline and to implement and to stick with it. So for me, at any given time that I'm getting ready to go into a virtual meeting, I've got multiple documents open, I've got multiple email services open, I have design programs open, browsers that have 10 to 15 tabs in each one. So my desktop is literally screaming, look at me, do this, do that. A really practical approach to get everybody in the habit as you're starting to do these virtual meetings could be to start your meeting with like a 1-minute distraction shutdown. And you call it out and you give everybody 60 seconds to do just that. Silence the phone, shut down all the programs. So mitigating all these tech-based distractions is really an important step that helps keep the meetings focused and helps keep you present, which is important for step number 2. So next slide, please. Whenever possible, do your virtual meetings with video. That allows for this important tip, number 2, eye contact. So this is really easy to think about, but it's harder to actually do when you're in a virtual environment, and not for the reasons that you might think. It's almost everyone's natural tendency to look at the video thumbnail of themselves when they're talking. What you want to do is look into the camera, which makes it appear that everyone else in that meeting, it makes it look to them like you're looking at them and making eye contact with them rather than looking at the screen. So, think about how weird it would be if you were having a conversation with somebody in person and the entire time that you're talking, they're looking just over your left shoulder. Probably you would stop and you'd want to turn around and look behind you, like, what's back there? I need to check this out. They keep looking over my left shoulder. It would feel strange. That's what happens in the virtual environment when you're looking at various things off on the screen rather than into the camera. So we all know that making the good eye contact creates a good environment for the meeting where everybody feels engaged and present in the conversation. Next slide, please. However, looking into the little camera at the top of your screen when you're talking is not natural, and it probably feels awkward. We're all used to looking at a person, not a little black dot at the top of our monitor. So in another life, I worked with television and video. And I want to share with you an easy trick from the field, and it is called cheat the camera. So here's how you cheat the camera when you're in a virtual meeting. You take the video thumbnails of your fellow meeting participants and you position them at the very top of your screen. You can even position the video of yourself just below your camera. That way you can watch the other people on the call, or if you naturally have a tendency to look at yourself, and it will appear to everybody else in the meeting that you're looking at them because your camera is just above your line of sight. So how to do this with your video conferencing software? Well, everybody's using different tools. We use Zoom very frequently. In Zoom, it's quite easy. You can do it through settings. You can drag and drop the videos around. You can change where the view is. Every video conferencing software I've ever seen has a way to do this. So Google is your friend here. You can do a quick Google search to find out how you can do this in whatever video meeting tool that you're using. Next slide, please. So if your meeting participants aren't engaged, then of course you're missing out on the value that each member brings to the table, which brings me to tip number 3. Actively include everyone. Now, not everybody is an assertive conversationalist, and in a virtual environment, it can make it even harder for some people to jump into the fray. I'm one of those people. If the conversation is moving very quickly, I tend to retreat into more of an observational role. So here's a few things that can help. Looking out for body language cues that somebody has something to say but hasn't had the opportunity to speak. So hand raising is great. We use that on our team when we meet. And sometimes it's not the speaker who's seen somebody else raise a hand that has a question, but it could be somebody else. So Nina could be speaking and I might raise my hand because I have something to say and Nina doesn't see it, but perhaps Jerry says, oh wait, Yvonne had a quick comment, let's get her comment before we move on to the next thing. So everybody can help out with that. So ask direct questions, another way to make sure everybody is included. Specifically name individuals and ask them for their input on different things. And the goal is not to put people on the spot. It's just to get a dialogue going and help everybody feel like their input is valued and they're included. And it has an added benefit of letting everybody know that they're expected to stay present and contribute to the conversation. So you might already be in the habit of doing these things in your on-site meetings and in-person meetings, but they can get lost in the virtual environment, especially if you haven't put in the first 2 tips into practice. So starving your distractions and making that eye contact. Next slide, please. So there you have it. These are my 3 simple tips for an engaged digital workplace, which benefits the whole team. First, you minimize distractions to be present, which allows you to practice good eye contact. And this in turn helps to actively include everybody. Our team's been at this for quite a long time, but we still benefit from tips and reminders like these, and we are always working to improve. Thank you. And Jerry, off to you.
Thanks, Yvonne. I don't know about the rest of you, but I had never heard cheat the camera before. So that's a new one on my list, and I'm going to be trying it. And I see the comments flying about our slides. Just want to acknowledge that and say that that's all due to Yvonne and her brilliance. So I'm going to kind of end this discussion with a focus on leadership strategies. Again, I'm Jerry, and I'm the director of the center, and I'm also team leader when my team allows me to be. I'm going to focus on strategies that we use regularly to get the work done and what leaders can do. We practice flexible leadership, as you know, many do in the interprofessional universe. The person in our team who knows the topic best and is and has done the work is expected to step forward. My role as leader is to create the environment that captures what Nina and Jody and Yvonne just talked about so that we can produce top quality work. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what specific things that we use, and I'm going to move into what CAIPER's work is. Sean Diego, next slide, please. So at our college at Arizona State, every department has a scorecard. We have specific and measurable goals that we set ourselves, and we report regularly to senior leadership. So we wanted to share CAIPER's, the Center for Advancing Interprofessional Practice, Education, and Research. You can see why we shorthand it as CAIPER. And these are CAIPER's scorecard. They include our internal work on the interprofessional curriculum, external grants, entrepreneurship, dissemination, as Jody mentioned, through our website and social media. And just as an aside here, in the place we all are right now with COVID-19, there is such a tremendous demand for e-learning and virtual learning. And we have been seeing our e-learning modules go out the roof. So please do share whatever you have with our community. Next slide, Sean Diego. So what are the strategies for productive, keyword here, productive remote meetings? This is where my previous corporate experience comes in. We have 2 meetings a week, and it's absolutely essential that we get the work done. We use these meetings to plan, to update, to prioritize, all the things that you've heard from my team members previously. Right now, with everyone stressed, isolated, kids at home, tons of animals, there's really need to do what Jody talked about, social connection as well as getting down to work. And I think we do that very well. So here's how we do it. We spend the first part of the meeting connecting, as Jody shared, and the charter is really very helpful. We don't spend a lot of time on it, but it's an opportunity for everybody to share how are we doing, what's going on, how are you feeling, how can we help each other, and then move into the active stage. We use the technology and the strategies Yvonne and Nina talked about to keep things moving in the meeting, and they teach me a lot. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not the most technologically focused, and we use tools because of the team members very effectively. So here are the things that help us. One, obvious, have an agenda. Take a few minutes on your agenda to identify priorities, who's going to lead the discussion, and keep to it. Share the responsibility across your team members for politely asking people to stay on topic. You find in the virtual universe that you're so glad to see each other that you can get off topic really quickly. We do it politely, gently, but we do it, okay? So social etiquette is really important here. So like we all know from IPEC competencies, we expect each of us to treat each other as valued colleagues with respect. And we use a lot of humor in our meetings as well. Hopefully you can see through this discussion, we really enjoy each other. Next slide. So team accountability. Virtual meetings work as well as each individual as well as the team taking accountability for getting the work done, for making the connections. So here are the things that we hold each other accountable for. Okay? Each one of us is responsible for using good team process. As members, particularly of an interprofessional center, we expect each other to walk our talk. We are role models for teamwork. People do watch us, and we do pay attention to this. I don't think any of the responsibilities that you see in front of you are surprising, and they're not terribly different on a digital team as they would be face-to-face. But as Yvonne said earlier, sometimes they're a little harder to keep moving simultaneously. And as we all know, several things are going on at the same time in remote meetings. We're planning, we're creating. We expect everybody on the team to be innovative and to share their ideas. So engagement becomes really critical to getting the work done. We're coordinating. This is where we do our planning work, whether we use XMind or any other planning technology. We support each other, we model, we educate. All these things are going on simultaneously. And one of my key roles as team leader is to keep these balanced and to call them out when it's helpful. Next slide. Here's something to watch pretty carefully, at least we have found it to be the case, is how we communicate between meetings. And I refer to this as kind of the Goldilocks effect. Communication is, we need to get it just right. Too much, too little. Too much is overwhelming. Too little is frustrating. It's isolating. And when we start seeing emails flying, like I'm getting 50 with action, or we're getting, the rolling emails where you can't follow the strand anymore, we've learned to stop and do process improvement right then to change the communication workflows so that nobody's getting frustrated and that people feel that they're in the loop. So getting this just right is important. Next slide. So what leaders can do to support remote teams, and this is Nina's word, is the leader's supposed to enable, and that's my dog who's joining in, is that, prior to COVID, one of my roles was to advocate for having a remote team. It was pretty unusual 6 years ago to have a totally remote team. So a lot of my work was justifying our existence to the powers that be. Clearly now that's not as much of an issue. But you also have to justify the digital technology and the expenses. And I noticed some of the questions in the chat room, and we'll get to this, is what are the expenses of these different programs? They're not very expensive. We put them in our budget routinely. Okay. The other thing that a leader needs to do is coach and model effective teamwork so that we walk our talk and we do attend to what we call the quadruple aim of teaming. We have to have quality products. We have to generate entrepreneurial activities as well as grants. People need to have a good experience and they need to feel good about it. And so this is the work of our team. Next slide. So we asked each other to say, all right, what's one takeaway message from each one of us? And here you have it before you. And so mine was, we work hard at this. We pay attention. It's important. Nina's message is let it evolve. It's a journey and you keep growing along the way. Yvonne's is stay engaged and be productive and make sure everybody feels included. And Jody's is give yourself permission to land first in your new normal and reach out to folks for support. So there you have it, our team. And let's take a look at the next slide, please. And I think we're up to Q&A. So Dr. Brandt, would you help facilitate?
I sure will. And that was a terrific presentation. And I'm looking in the camera, but I decided to turn it off. So great tips that we received. And you're getting some fan mail through the Q&A and the chat. And again, really encouraging questions. We have about 20 minutes left, and we like that, so we can have discussion and answer your questions. So the first one that you noted too, Jerry, is about the technology. So the first one is, your slides are engaging. What PowerPoint program did you use for your slide backgrounds?
All right, that's obvious. Yvonne, where are you?
I'm here. So I have a background in graphic design, and so I have a tendency to do a lot of custom graphic work on PowerPoint. So I did get a template that I used, and then I customized a lot of the graphics and changed the template. So there was a lot of custom artwork that went into the PowerPoint, but it was done on a Mac, if that helps, just PowerPoint on a Mac.
Okay.
No, you cannot steal Yvonne. She is ours.
So again, many people are saying great presentation, like the tips, like your TV pictures, love them. So let's turn to two questions on the actual technology tools. One is there a cost for Xmine?
Nina, you want to take that?
Sure, yes. There is a cost for the tools that we are currently using, and in the form of annual subscriptions most often. Some are one-offs when you purchase them for the first time, then you have access to them. Both Smartsheet and Xmine have annual subscriptions of about $100 each. So we find that it's not too prohibitive to maintain these.
That's great. And a related question is, when choosing digital tools, did you look at privacy and security issues? Did this influence your choice of tools to use?
When we first started out, that wasn't so much on the forefront. Recently, we definitely do that. Some of the tools that we are using, for example, transcription service Rev that we really like, they have all sorts of privacy assurances, and we increasingly look at that as one of the criteria, yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask the next question about working at home with children. And I have to tell you first that as we were having this webinar, my granddaughter did a kid messenger to me. So it's not just at home, but it's distractions outside of the home. So how in the world can you do that if you were working at home with children? Anybody working at home with children?
All right, who wants to take that? We have 3 team members with young children all at home right now. I'm the old one in the group. So who wants to start? Yvonne, you want to start with that?
But you have a dog child.
Yeah, and a parrot and a cat, all who can be in the room at the same time. Yvonne?
Sure, I'll go. I have 2 small children. So I have 2 boys. One is almost 3 and the other one is 6. And we are doing school at home with the 6-year-old. The way that we manage it is, my husband and I, we take turns, we set boundaries, we try to help the children understand about work time, which they do to some extent, the young one not so much. But something that helps with the younger children is that before I have long meetings, I take 10 minutes and I give them 10 minutes of time. Like, okay, we're going to connect for 10 minutes. And then you're going to spend time with Papa and you guys are going to do other things. And so that really helps, is taking a little bit of time to have a little bit of a connection, and then you get a block of time to work. But I don't ever have 5 or 6 hours of work time that's uninterrupted. That's just not a realistic scenario for working at home with small children. It doesn't happen, and it doesn't work that way. So you find other ways to make compromises and to make it work.
Thanks, Yvonne. Nina, you want to take it from there?
Well, sure. I have two quick tips. I have an 11-year-old, and what I find that a little bit of spotlight goes a really long way. So if she does pop up into the screen, usually she's happy to say hello and then go her way. And my team is most allowing and understanding of that. So that is one. And my second one just escaped me. So if I remember it, I'll chime back in.
Thanks, Nina. Jody, your tips?
So I have the teenager in the group. My son Noah is 13, and with everyone else, we've transitioned to him being taking care of his schoolwork from home. And he really likes the idea of treating it as his office hours, just like mom has her office hours. So we kind of have a dynamic of, well, we're both at work right now, and we'll catch up later in the day. So I think playing into his age and giving him accountability and that ownership has really helped out.
Great. Thanks, Jody. Barb?
Okay. And let me just say that we do have the raising hand function, and I will be calling on someone to actually ask the question so we can hear the question. But we have several others that I'd like to ask that I think are great questions. One is, many of our work laptops do not have cameras. Any idea on how to keep folks engaged virtually when most of the team does not have the ability to see each other?
Yvonne, you want to try that?
Sure. So my recommendation would be to get a camera. You can get cameras that you can just USB plug into a laptop that are extremely inexpensive now. So if that's a possibility, do that. Another possibility is, do these team members have cell phones or tablets? Because iPads or tablets are going to have cameras built in. Cell phones, smartphones have got cameras built in, and most video conferencing, including Zoom, you can download an app for your phone and you can do a Zoom call right on your phone. You just prop your phone up and you've got your camera. So there's there's some other avenues to get that video in there. That would be the first route that I would take, would be really to try to get the video in, because it makes a huge difference to be able to see each other.
Okay. There are two leadership questions that have come in, and I'm going to bundle those in a minute, but I'm going to call upon Kim Hartman, who raised her hand. If you can join us verbally, if we didn't lose her.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you very much for this really nice seminar. And I was very interested in how your team actually develops online modules or some kind of learning opportunities for students. And if you use these same principles or techniques when in your IP education with your students.
How about if I start that one, and then the whole team can join in, because Kim, we do that together as a group.
Great.
So that we have a whole portfolio of different products for students that we've developed. So the e-learning modules, which are, like I said, tremendously popular right now. We've also moved into digital magazines. We have the blogs. All of it is student friendly. How we do that, everything we do is grounded in IPEC competencies. So we always start there. And we typically aim for the useful stuff. So I tend to be the clinical sort of subject matter expert of what do our students need in the clinical areas, and we focus on that. So whether it be modules on communication or teamwork, or on core team processes like care coordination or integrated care, we really keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening clinically so that our students are really ready to move into the clinical areas and be collaboration ready. The translation of that really then goes to the rest of the team of how we do that, how we design it, and for whom. I'll just say one word there and then shift over to whoever wants to pick it up on my team. Is we also try to develop our materials not only for students, for clinical practitioners who are going to precept our students. And we've done a lot of work with interviewing clinicians about what kind of education they want. That's how the digital magazine emerged, because they basically told us they wanted short, active, engaging, and they wanted a lot of choice. And we're finding our students want the same thing. So Yvonne, Nina, Jody, who wants to pick up the ball?
I can, this is Nina, I can quickly speak to some of the processes that we employed that are really not very different from what we've described in this presentation in terms of the digital teaming. And these strategies were employed when we were developing the e-learning modules, where we had a mandatory step of student feedback and review. And given that we are a distributed team, we certainly did not veer off from these practices. We involved the students in a virtual fashion, got together in a focus group, collected their feedback through Google Forms, analyzed it, sent stuff back to them for a couple of more iterations, and really made that process both meaningful and seamless. So how we do it beyond our team is actually, the approach is the extension of how we do it within our team. I can let Yvonne talk about technology part more.
Well, Nina, I was going to comment on the same thing that you did. I think just including the students in that review process was a big part of it. And it was a part of not just looking at the content, but the students also reviewed the technology and the usability, the accessibility of it. And so they provided feedback to us on many different points. And if it was content that was confusing, then our subject matter expert addressed those issues. And if there were issues with something was confusing in terms of navigation or an interaction was difficult, then that was something that I went back and I looked at and I tweaked. And so we all worked together and to solicit that feedback that was very diverse, and then react to it and take steps to improve things before we have a final product.
Okay. Jerry, you ready for some more questions?
Yep, sure. Go on to the next one.
I'm going to bundle 3 leadership questions. One is how, and people are intrigued with you've worked remotely for 6 years. How is your staff evaluated for promotion or salary changes since you are remote? Trust the reported time devoted to work?
Okay. We do, and I imagine most of you do, we do annual reviews. And so we have a template to do that, and we do that together. So we schedule a time, we go over it. Typically, my team members will complete that. They will self-evaluate, and we'll go over it and talk about the typical stuff that you would do in an annual review. We don't wait for annual reviews. Hopefully, I would expect every one of my team members to say they know how they're doing. We provide constant feedback to each other. We are constantly mentoring and supporting each other. I think it was Jody who said, we really are committed to each other's success. We are a small team and we produce a lot. And so we rely on each other, really doing the work, hitting time frames, being effective. And so there shouldn't be an issue of a surprise in an evaluation or an annual eval. And I would just add, the last thing is, I'm not a micromanager. I expect people to do the work. If they can't do it for whatever reason, they share that, and we create an environment that they can be successful. And I think that pervades our work together. Yvonne, Nina, Jody, you want to add anything to evals and how we do it and quality improvement?
Jerry, this is Nina again. This brought back the thought that I just moments ago lost. And this is a huge argument towards remote teaming. I find that the flexibility that the geographic distance, including that of time difference, the difference in the time zone actually allows for increased efficiency and productivity. And I find that that helps with the distractions at home and the fact that we can actually, beyond the meetings, we can actually work on our priorities at a time that's actually best for our individual lives and contexts. And of course, I agree with everything else that Jerry stated. We are, I believe, a high-functioning team, committed, extremely supportive of each other, and always on the lookout toward facilitation of each other's success. So all that combined, I think, got us to where we are at now.
Cool. Jerry, I'm looking at the time, and I want to get in a few more questions here
Sure,
that are
go for it.
related.
Yeah, because we
very
have
much. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I saw questions, Barb, about people wanted contact information, and it's in our slides so that
Yes, and the blog. We'll definitely send that out with communication, where to access the archived webinar, your blog, contact information.
Thanks.
But I want to make sure we get a couple more questions in. And the related one is, can you share a few examples of team charter elements that you regularly review specific to virtual teaming?
Sure. We make them up as we go along. So Jody shared the All Boats Rise, and it may be as simple as, all ideas are considered, and, they vary according to whether we want to encourage creativity, whether we want to support each other, and we just make them up. We have a charter with probably a list of, I don't know, Jody, how many things we have? About 30 sort of sayings that we've made up along?
I would say about 30, and it continues to grow.
Yes, so we'd be glad to share those with you. But I would just encourage you is make up what's important to you. You can hear what's important to us, so we make them up in the minute of the meeting. Whatever anybody wants to talk about and wants to move forward is just fine.
So the next one is about, since there are bound to be differences or differing perspectives on any team, can you give any tips for managing disagreements or differing perspectives in the online environment versus face-to-face?
Certainly. As leader, I always win, right, Yvonne, Jody, Nina? So we have disagreements all the time, and you create a culture that it's okay to disagree, but you also create that culture of you disagree with respect and clarity. Some of us, we work a lot with our College of Architecture and our designers and our actors and musicians. We've been practicing some improv techniques, which is yes and, not but. So that you take but out of the conversation, so you build on each other and you listen to each other. I have to say, on our team, creativity is absolutely integral to the work we do. So even when we're tired, frustrated, and we want it to be over, we listen respectfully, because you never know when the next best idea is going to come. And conflict management is critical. We're thinking that that's probably going to be our next e-learning module or part of one.
Great. Somebody added to your example, one of our department values is to disagree and commit. We can disagree with each other and have productive conversations, but we need to leave the meeting committing to the decision. That's great.
Cool. Very nice.
Yes. So, and again, I can tell people really love this webinar because they want to make sure they get the email from us with the links to your website and as well as your blogs. And certainly we will be sending out the communication as to where this archived webinar is, and encourage everyone to share freely. and so that you can also follow up with the CAIPER work. So I'm going to ask Jerry, is there anybody on your team have any comments or want to add anything? I actually have, Sean just reminded me, I do have some housekeeping. You want to, sorry, go ahead. 1 minute. The next webinar is hosted, we're hosting Indiana University's Interprofessional Practice and Education Center. And they're going to talk about how they took their programs statewide. They have actually 9 sites throughout the state of Indiana and had to do that very quickly. And next, we have Jefferson Center for Interprofessional Education and Practice is going to do one on April the 27th. CAPOW, Changing on a Dime, Successes and Challenges with Virtual Home Visits in the Jefferson Health Mentor Program. Many of you have followed this center. A key component is health mentors and homes. And on a dime, they had to change the way they did their time, honored tradition of their health mentor program. So with that, it's 2 o'clock. I want to thank thank the Arizona team, thank the team in the National Center, and those of you who have joined us today, and for all of the webinars. We look forward to being with you for the next one on, I think it was the 23rd. Thank you.